So go ahead and lie on your back. And you can have something under your head if you need. You can adjust the volume if you are having a hard time hearing. Go ahead and take off your glasses, belt, shoes, anything gets in your way. Cats are always welcome to participate. Good. And so start to feel how you make contact with the floor. What kind of information does the floor give you about yourself? How do you meet the floor today? And notice how maybe that's different from other days. I think a lot of times we have general patterns of, this side's longer, or this hip does this thing, or whatever it might be. But sometimes it's different. Roll your head a little bit to one side and to the other. And just notice which way you go first. And is that the same way you normally roll your head first? Is that the way that normally is easier? Or is it different today? And just do a little bit. Feel, is one way more like rolling your head uphill, and the other more like rolling your head downhill? Good. And leave that. Just feel your breathing. And notice, where do you feel that movement of your breath? What moves as you breathe? Observe the movement of your lower abdomen, below your belly button. Good. So now go ahead and roll onto your stomach. If that's uncomfortable for you in any way, you can place a towel under your chest, under your belly. So roll onto your stomach. So you're lying on your front. And have your hands one on top of the other, and your forehead resting on your hands. And have your knees about hip width apart, and then bend your knees so that your feet come towards the ceiling. And let your feet lean against each other. So your knees are separated, but your feet lean against each other. Your feet are towards the ceiling, your knees bent. And then begin this movement of tilting the legs a little bit to the right. So you let your left foot slide down your right leg. Good, that's it. And just a little bit and come back. It's not a stretch, you're not trying to go all the way. But just see how you initiate that movement. Notice what you do with your breathing. see if you can feel how that movement travels through you. So your feet tilt, your legs tilt, but what else happens? What happens in your pelvis? Maybe even in your hip joints and your hip sockets that causes your pelvis to roll, to tilt a little bit. And does it travel up your spine at all? So your left foot stays in contact with your right leg the whole time. You just feel where you can breathe easily. Which elbow is pulled down? Which elbow comes towards your knees? It's subtle. See if that's something you can feel. And then go ahead and turn, just pause for a moment. Maybe bring your legs down. And turn your head to the left so that your right ear rests on your hands. And then bend your knees again, bring your feet towards the ceiling. And have your left hand on top. I should have said that before. So your right ear is resting on your left hand. And then again, let your feet lean against each other and let your legs tilt to the right. Feel how your left foot slides down your right leg. And feel how the pressure shifts on your ribs. So what happens in the way that your chest lies on the floor? And where can you soften in your ribs and your chest? In English we call it a rib cage, but in German the translation is rib basket, which gives this sense of much more flexibility. And really, as far as our skeleton goes, each rib is individual and it connects in the back at our spine, and it connects in the front with cartilage. But all the way around, each rib is free and individual. So see, as you tilt the legs, can you sense that? Can you sense where your ribs can soften, where they can allow for this movement? Good. And see if you can follow this movement up your spine. Which vertebra move individually? And which ones feel like they're kind of stuck together in a group? Like they move as a unit. And notice with your head turned to the left, is there a little bit more movement than there was with your head in the middle? Leave that, roll onto your back, and take a rest. And you remember, as always, this is your lesson, so you do whatever whenever you need to take care of yourself. You rest whenever you want. You can always do the lesson in your imagination. You can imagine parts of the lesson. And just notice your contact with the floor. Feel what it's like to roll your head now. Is that any different? Just a little bit, just to feel the beginning of that. It's not about how far you go. We're much more interested in the quality and the beginning of the movement. How you initiate the movement, how you organize the movement. Good. Leave that and then roll onto your stomach again. This time, let's see, place your left hand on top of your right, so roll onto your stomach. Place your left hand on top of your right, and rest your right ear on your left hand. Oh, sorry, I got it. So put your left ear on top of your left hand, so you're looking to the right. And then bend your knees, have your knees separated a little bit, and let your feet lean against each other, and begin tilting your legs again to the right, so the same direction we've been doing. And just go a little bit. Go slow. Go really slow, because there's something really interesting happening in your spine here. So feel, where can you do this movement so that it's just as easy, so that you only use as much effort as you were using before. And feel what that twist is like in your spine. Feel with your head turned this way, is it more difficult, or do your legs tilt further? And it could also be that the way your spine is organized, that it is easier this way. Or it could be that it's much more difficult. So you feel that for yourself. And imagine that I were to come around and just with my finger help you mark each individual vertebra. So see if you can feel each of your vertebrae as you travel up your spine. And just feel where each vertebra is and how it moves. So some of your vertebra, parts of your spine, part of your spine is turning with your legs, with your pelvis. But also part of your spine is turned with your head. See if you can feel that difference. And for the sake of comparison, just take your knees to the right. So part of the experiment is being able to sense the difference. So just go one direction. And notice, when do you inhale? You inhale as you tilt the knees, as the knees come back. You inhale in the pause, in between movements. So once or twice tilt the knees as you exhale. See if that makes a difference. Good. And then leave that, roll onto your back and rest. Just feel how you make contact with the floor now. If you can, ignore the screen, because that'll change the way you orient your head. Notice where you allow the floor to support you a little bit more. And when you come to rest, what do you let go of? What does that mean to you to rest? Good. So now come onto your stomach again, roll over. And this time, have your knees together. Turn your head to the left and place your right ear on the floor. So, and then interlace your hands, interlace your fingers, and place your hands over your head, so over your left ear. So your hands are on your left ear, on the left side of your head. So your hands are resting on your head, on the left side of your head. Your hands are covering your left ear. Good. And your knees are joined together. Your knees are bent, your feet towards the ceiling. So maybe you can imagine that there's a gentle string around your legs at the knees and around your ankles. So your legs stay together. And then like this, see what it's like to tilt your knees to the right. So if the knees are tied together, yeah, it means your left knee needs to come away from the floor. They're going to tilt and stay tied together. So your ankles stay tied together, your knees stay together. So that means your legs have to pivot together. So your left knee needs to come away from the floor. And see if you can feel where that's a possibility. And if your left knee doesn't want to come away from the floor, then don't go that far. Just do a little bit. But the idea is that your legs stay together. Like you're a mermaid, maybe. And instead of having two legs, you just have one tail. Feel your breathing. So where can you reduce the effort? What happens if you pause in between each movement? If every time you come back to the middle, you pause, you take a breath, you let go of the movement you just did. So they don't run together. Every time you tilt the knees, it's like you're doing it for the first time. Because every time is different. Each time you tilt the knees, it'll be a little bit different. So see if you can feel what's different each time. And see if you can notice, are your legs sliding? Do you feel your left foot start to slide down to your right ankle? And then do less. Do even less. Feel where you can make it easier. It doesn't matter how far you go. Feel how your spine twists, especially what's happening in your upper chest, or like between your shoulder blades. What happens towards the base of your neck. Rest whenever you want. See if you can feel how you lengthen. Like your knees and the top of your head come 0.5 millimeter away from each other as you tilt the legs. Can you do it in a way that's smooth and reversible? So it's not like you throw the legs. At any point as you're tilting the legs, you could pause, you could stay there, you could change direction and come back. What happens in your left elbow? Does your left elbow move away from you, upward, away from your head, or does it come down towards your knees? Not because you do something, but just what happens on its own. Let go of your head, bring your legs down, and really slowly, gently bring your head back to the middle. Your head's been constrained here for a minute or two, so be gentle with your neck, and then slowly roll onto your back, and rest on your back. Rest here. Feel your contact with the floor. And the rests are important. The rests are just important as the rest of the lesson. These pauses are what give you a chance to sense the difference, to feel what's changed, and to integrate the change. It doesn't do you much good to lie on the floor and to feel all these different options, all these different ways of doing things, and then to stand up and forget everything and go right back to the way you usually do things. So see if you can give it some time to sink in. head a little bit and see how that is now. Do half that much. That's it. Good. How is that now? How is that different? Because I can see it's different. Leave that. Just observe your breathing. So I'll go ahead and tell you that the title of this lesson is "The Carriage of the Head Affects the State of the Musculature." So in other words, what you do with the head, the way you balance your head on top of everything, that affects the way you carry yourself. So observe the movement of your lower abdomen. And see how does it change your breathing. Your breathing is one of the most fundamental and important functions that you do. It's a great reference point, a great baseline. When you're ready, roll onto your stomach. Turn your head to the right so that your left ear is resting on the floor. And interlace your fingers the non-habitual way. So have the other thumb on top than you normally do. So if you interlace your fingers the normal way and then you switch them over one finger and place your hands over your right ear, bring your knees together. Go ahead and bend your knees so your feet come towards the ceiling. And again, you imagine that your legs are tied together at your knees and at your ankles, just gently. Your head is turned to the right. You have your fingers interlaced over your right ear. If that's comfortable. If that's not an option for you, don't do it. You're in charge of what you do. And then begin to tilt your knees to the right. Leaving the knees touching, the ankles touching. And if you only tilt the knees 3 inches, great. If it's hard for you to keep your legs together and to tilt the legs, do it in your imagination once or twice. Or only do it in your imagination. But the constraint is that you don't let your legs slip. Don't let your left leg slide. Feel where you can do less. You do it in a way that you can still breathe. See if you can observe your whole body, your whole self. You have that general kind of awareness. It's a different thing, especially for performers, whether that's athletes or musicians or any kind of performer. When you when you sense yourself in a general way, when you sense your whole self, it changes the movement. It changes the way your brain processes that movement and the way you organize yourself compared to if you, for example, think about your knees or think about your wrist. So you see, how does the movement change when you just do it and see if you can sense your whole self. That's it. Good. Let your breathing be easy. And you only do as much as you want to do. You might have a lesson, this might be a lesson for you that's really fascinating, and you want to do it a billion times and figure out all of the nuances. Or it might be the kind of lesson for you today where you mostly want to listen, or you just want to do each movement once or twice. Good. Lengthen your legs. Slowly, gently let go of your head. Roll to be on your back and take a rest. Rest with your legs long if that's okay. But you're always welcome to have your knees bent if that's better for you. But just as far as comparisons, if you get a better comparison if you're in the same configuration. So just rest on your back for a moment. Feel your contact with the floor. And we've only tilted the knees, the legs to the right. So see what that's done. How do you feel that? Just resting on your back for a moment. And then go ahead and come up to stand. Slowly bend your knees, roll to one side. Slowly make your way to standing. Leave your eyes closed if that's okay for you. Just to stay with your internal sensation of yourself. And just stand for a moment. See how that is. And then walk around. Open your eyes before you walk around. And notice the movement of your head as you walk. If it's difficult for you to walk, you don't walk so much. But feel how your head moves as you shift weight from one leg to the other. Feel the erectness of your trunk, your sense of uprightness. Feel where your pelvis is in space, your control of your legs. Sense your breathing lower abdomen. And compare your right eye and your left eye. Is there a difference between one side of your face and the other? So this is that part about integrating it. Walking around, noticing the differences. And this is also a very important part of the lesson. You could maybe even argue that this is the most important part of the lesson. When you feel like you've gotten a good enough sense of that, come back and lie on your stomach. Place your one hand on top of the other, with your forehead resting on your hands. So your head's in the middle. And then have your knees apart, your feet leaning against each other. And just simply let your legs tilt to the right. This is what we did at the very beginning. Simply, easily, without any extra anything. See how that is. How do you do that differently now than at the beginning of the lesson? It looks really smooth. It looks really easy. And the other difference that I'm seeing too is that no one's going further than what's easy and comfortable for them. And the movement is reversible. You can stop and pause at any moment. Good. Roll onto your back. Feel the difference between your left side and your right side. Have your legs long, if that's okay for you. Feel how your left heel and your right heel make contact with the floor. How does your right leg rest on the floor? And your left leg. Feel your right hip and your left hip. The left side of your torso and the right side of your torso. Does one side of you feel longer or shorter? Is there a difference in your breathing on one side than the other? Feel the left side of your neck and the right side of your neck. The right side of your face, the left side of your face. And then roll onto your stomach again. And lie however is comfortable for you. And just see if you can remember the lesson. So just kind of think through what we did. See how much of it you can remember. It's okay if you don't remember the order or if you leave something out. you just think through and see what comes to you. There won't be a test. Just think through what we've done. And now we'll do it together. I'll help you with it. But you're going to imagine the lesson on the left side, just in your imagination. So you just imagine with your knees apart. If it helps you to actually bend your knees and to come into that configuration, you can do that. If you want to leave your legs long, that's okay too. But you just imagine simply tilting the legs to the left. The right foot slides against the left. And you just do this in your imagination. So don't do any of these movements. Just imagine it. You imagine tilting the feet to the left. You imagine the feeling of the right foot sliding down the left lower leg. And then you imagine how that moves through your spine. How that moves through the rest of you. And then imagine what it's like to tilt your legs to the left with your head turned to the right. You can rest whenever you want. You can adjust your position if that's helpful. You just imagine what it's like to tilt the legs to the left with your head turned to the right. And feel how that moves through your whole self. And then imagine what it's like with your head to the left, tilting your legs to the left, tilting your feet to the left. And again, if it helps you to feel it, to turn your head, you can do that. But just imagine the movements. And then imagine what it's like with your legs tied together. So your knees are joined, your ankles are joined. First imagine with your head turned to the right, your legs joined together. And then imagine with your head turned to the left and your legs joined together. And you see, is it easier to actually do the movements, or is it easier to imagine the lesson? Sense your breathing. Even imagining, we can use a lot of extra effort. Can you breathe and can you imagine at the same time? You don't have to focus or concentrate. It doesn't have to be perfect. Even in your imagination, it's just the first approximation. It's just what's easy. And the next time you'll see a little bit more is easy. onto your back and rest. Sense your contact with the floor. Feel, is your image of yourself a little bit clearer? Do you have a little bit clearer picture of your self-image? Are there parts of yourself you can sense that weren't in that picture before, or weren't as clear before? And then one last time, come to lie on your stomach. Have your knees hip width apart. And rest your forehead on your hands. Bend your knees so your feet come towards the ceiling, and let your feet lean against each other. And try each side. So try tilting your knees to the right, which we did. And just remind yourself how that is. Feet stay touching. And then try to the left, which you haven't actually done yet. And how is it to do it to the left now? So the other part of this lesson is comparing the difference between acting and thinking, or imagining and doing. You feel that. And there's not an answer, there's not a right or wrong, but just feel what the difference is. And that's pretty crazy too, just that we didn't do anything to the left side. You haven't tilted your knees to your legs to the left at all. And you see how it feels for you. Let your breathing be easy. And then leave that. Slowly make your way to standing and walk around a little.